Morning, you're right. I hope you're well and having a lovely day. Please could you write the date and the title, The Betrayal of Magwitch and the Victorian Prison Ships. For this lesson, you'll need a pen, pencil and highlighter, a PDF copy of the Great Expectations extract, and your exercise book. Okay, so do now. These are the misty December marshes where Pip meets Magwitch. I'd like you to write 5 sentences or phrases which describe this setting. Try to appeal to the reader's senses and use imagery, such similes, metaphors, and personification. Pause the video for 5 minutes to do this now. Okay, so these are some examples of sentences you may have written. The fog had captured the marshes and was reluctant to let it go. So that's giving human characteristics to the fog, so of course is personification. Here and there, a small bird fluttered through the gloom, so imagery referring to sight. The dampness clung to your clothes and soaked your feet. Some madcap artist had streaked the land with grey. The marshland was like a faded photograph. All light and colour had seeped away. So this is the actual extract from Great Expectations. It was a rimy morning and very damp. I had seen the damp lying on the outside of my little window, as if some goblin had been crying there all night and using the window for a pocket handkerchief. Now I saw the damp lying on the bare hedges and spare grass, like a coarser sort of spider's webs, hanging itself from twig to twig and blade to blade. On every rail and gate, wet lay clammy, and the marsh mist was so thick that the wooden finger on the post directing people to our village, a direction which they never accepted, for they never came there, was invisible to me until I was quite close under it. So, Magwitch has escaped from one of the hulks, a prison ship on the Thames estuary. After the American War of Independence, the Victorians were no longer able to transport prisoners to America, so British prisons became incredibly overcrowded. So the Victorians used naval vessels that were no longer seaworthy as floating prisons. Please click on the link in class charts to watch a video about life on board these ships. Pause the video for 4 minutes to do that now. I would like you to read the extract describing Pip bringing food and file to Magwitch. Find the quotations that prove Magwitch is the following: cold and unwell, starving, frightened and emotional. Pause the video for 15 minutes to do this now. So these are the answers. Cold and unwell, hugging himself, shivered all the while so violently. I think you've got the ague, a fever. Starving, handing mincemeat down his throat. He was gobbling mincemeat, meat bone, bread, cheese and pork pie, all at once. Frightened, and often stopping, even stopping his jaws, to listen. You're not a deceiving imp. You brought no one with you. Emotional. A wretched warmint hunted as near death and dunghill as his poor wretched warmint is, and he smeared his ragged rough sleeve over his eyes. If you didn't get these, please note them down now. Okay, so cannons are fired when prisoners escape from the hulks, and soldiers are sent out to pursue them. Here Magwitch describes imagining the soldiers coming for him, as he spent the night alone on the marshes. Why, see now, said he, when a man's alone on these flats, with a light head and a light stomach, perishing of cold and want. He hears nothing all night but guns firing and voices calling. He sees the soldiers with their red coats lighted up by the torches carried afore, closing in round him. Hears his number called, hears himself challenged, hears the rattle of the muskets, hears the orders, make ready, present, cover him steady, men, and is laid hands on, and there's nothing. Why, if I see one pursuing party last night, coming up in order, damn 'em with their tramp, I see 100, and as to firing, why, I see the mist shake with the cannon, after it was broad day. So your task, how is Magwitch feeling in this extract? Make notes on how Dickens uses language and structure to show this. Pause the video for 10 minutes to do this now. Okay, so you may have noted an exclamatory sentence, which creates a sense of fear and urgency. We've got red and fire, which are symbols of danger, closing in round him, making his fate seem inescapable. The repetition of hears makes these imaginary sounds seem constant. We've got the expletive, which is a swear word or oath, which shows his anxiety. And we've also got Magwitch describing these imaginary sounds which appeal to the reader's senses, really bringing his fear to life. The next day, soldiers call at Pip's home, wanting Pip's brother-in-law, the blacksmith, to mend a pair of handcuffs. Pip finds himself accidentally on the manhunt for Magwitch, riding on the shoulders of his brother-in-law, the kindly Joe Gogeri. When Magwitch is finally captured, he notices Pip and wants to make sure the young boy doesn't get into any trouble for helping him. Magwitch says that he was the one who stole food and file from the blacksmith's home, and then he is taken back to the Hulk. Okay, so let's read through this description of Magwitch being rowed out to the prison ship and boarding. The something that I had noticed before clipped in the man's throat again, and he turned his back. The boat had returned, and his guard were ready, so we followed him to the landing place made of rough stakes and stones, and saw him put into the boat, which was rowed by a crew of convicts like himself. No one seemed surprised to see him, or interested in seeing him, or glad to see him, or sorry to see him, or spoke a word, except that somebody in the boat growled as if to the dogs, "Give way, you!" which was the signal for the dip of oars. By the light of the torches, we saw the black hulk lying out a little way from the mud of the shore, like a wicked Noah's Ark, cribbed and barred and moored by massive rusty chains. The prison ship seemed in my young eyes to be ironed like the prisoners. We saw the boat go alongside, and we saw him taken up the side and disappear. Then the ends of the torches were flung, hissing, into the water, and went out, as if it were all over with him. So your task is to write a peel paragraph answering the following question. How is the prison ship presented? You need to support your points with quotations, analysing language and structure. Also, consider the effect of quotations on the reader. So I've got some sentence starters for you. Point. The prison ship is presented as, the ship is described as, at the end of the extract. Evidence, for example, or this can be seen through the quote. Analysis. Make sure you're analysing language and structure, so language devices such as similes, metaphors, and individual words and phrases, and structure devices such as tricolons and listing. And then finally, make a link. This would make the reader feel, making the reader feel. And so pause the video now for 10 minutes to do this. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson. I hope you found it interesting and enjoyable, and I look forward to speaking to you again next time.